for the things that are unclean when they're made whole. We dunk them in water. Or sometimes you sprinkle them with water. Right? Things that are clean, that are holy, blood is used for that. Sacrifice. So far, so good? Cool. Yeah?
What is the Hebrew word for clean?
What is the Hebrew word? The Hebrew word itself
Yes.
is tahor.
Thank you.
And for unclean is tameh. Oops. Tameh. And holy is kadosh. As if you can read that.
I have a question, and this may be something that everybody else already knows except me,
It probably
but
is.
I was reading through it, you know what I mean? So obvious. But for the first time, as I was reading through Leviticus last night, it just jumped out to me.
I bet you've never said that before in your life.
Yeah, I meant the first time I read Leviticus. No.
Yeah.
You know, they were called to lay the kidneys and the liver on the altar, right? And you know, the liver filters blood and the kidneys filter water,
Mhm.
right? Is that the purpose?
Probably not.
That,
It's really smart. It's really creative. I doubt it
okay.
because, and again, the reason why I doubt it isn't because that presuppositions is that it's something that we know that the kidneys and the liver do. That's the purpose that they do in the circulatory system. So far, so good?
Right. Yeah.
No one knew about the circulatory system until 1690.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, there was no there were these things inside. Obviously, when you went to war and you ran somebody through and you cut them in half, these things fell out.
Right.
Right?
But it was God that told them to do it, and God knows what they were used for, right? That was my thought process.
Yeah.
I was just trying to figure out why he kept asking them to put the kidneys and the liver on the altar and not
it
something
probably
else.
has to do with. It probably has to do with that sacrifices. I would suspect that sacrifices have to do with flesh. Right, you burn flesh. That's what the sacrifice is about. And these are things that don't fit because it's not flesh and it's not flesh. It's something in the body that's not, and so we take them out. And also in the ancient world, consistently, whatever's going, these inward organs are consistently somehow always separated from sacrifices. And so it may just be, again, a presupposition about this is just what you do, and so when we do sacrifices, that's what we do as well. And so it's really creative, though. It's really good. Cool. Question? Any other questions, concerns? Yeah.
I've got a question about this whole uncleanliness of the pigs and the shellfish.
Yes.
And it's God that came up and said, this is, I'm assuming God says this is not clean, but God made it and declared initially, well, this is good.
Yeah.
It's unclean.
Yeah, and it has to do, and again, that's a really loaded question. It's a really good question. It has to do, and again, we'll see it. Well, let's go ahead and do it, and I'll keep talking. Just right now, because again, they're not trying to pull the wool over your eyes. In chapter 11, what they're doing is that they're taking three different types of animals. Remember the three different tripartite things. They're talking about land animals, they're talking about water animals, and they're talking about creepy crawlies, right? And land animals, water animals, and creepy crawlies all have certain characteristics. You take a look at all land animals. Here, again, this is the thought process. You take a look at all land animals, and they have certain things in common. Except if they don't, right? And they're absolutely explicit about what they think, the things that they have in common. The Lord spoke to Moses and Aaron, saying to them, "Speak to the people of Israel, saying, from among all the land animals, these are the creatures that you may eat." And that's going to be the second part of what I'm talking about in just a second. But again, remember that. That's important. So these have to do with things that you can eat or not eat. It doesn't mean that they themselves or anything. It has to do with putting it inside your body. That's important. And it doesn't have to, and again, just sort of making clear about this, it doesn't have to do with health, it doesn't have to do with again, I mean, these things all go around. It doesn't have to do with trichinosis, it doesn't have to do with salmonella, it doesn't have to do, because I can tell you, nobody knew about trichinosis, nobody knew about salmonella until 1900s, right? What these have to do with is right there in the text. From among all the land animals, these are the creatures that you may eat. You just read it right off the page. Any animal that has divided hooves and is cleft-footed, all right, and chews the cud, that's what you can eat. It's got to satisfy both of those things, because that's what a real land animal is. If it doesn't satisfy both of those things, it's not a real land animal, and therefore it's unclean. And what it means in this particular case, with animals, what it means to be unclean is something that you can't eat.
We said unhealthy.
We would say unhealthy. They would say, there's something about it. Can you eat horse? Yeah, you can. Lots of people do. Can you eat cat? Yeah, you can. Lots of people do. But the people that wrote this, something. I don't know if it's anyone else's, and again, this is trying to put myself in the mind of somebody that lived 2,500 years ago. But it's like, I don't know if anybody here, that when you see blood, I remember very clearly, this was when I was in high school, a very good friend of mine had a motorcycle accident. So I went with him to the hospital, and he's lying there, and he like scraped up his arm, and the nurse comes in, and she takes this big swab, she like sticks it up inside, and she's like moving all around, and you can see the swab like going, you know, it's,
Oh my gosh.
exactly. And it's like, I saw that, right? And I said to myself, there's something that is not quite right. No, I didn't. I got sort of woozy and lightheaded, and it like freaked me out. I suspect that for the people that wrote this, when they saw a pig, I don't know if they got lightheaded, but it was like, right? It's that type of visceral thing that it doesn't conform. It doesn't do what you think it should. It's like a speaker maybe, or maybe even like a magic marker that doesn't quite write well. Doesn't, you know. So, same thing with verse 9. These are the things that you can eat of everything that's in the waters, everything in the waters that has fins and scales, whether in the seas or the streams, that's what you can eat. You've got to have both of those things. Calamari, out. Doesn't have either, right? Right. Catfish, according to them, out. Right, has fins but it doesn't have scales. Right. So anyway, right. And then 13. These are you shall regard as detestable. Oh, there's also birds. I think with the birds is that it's not about what they are like. It's that they come in contact with corpses. That is things that are scavengers, because that tends toward death. And the winged insects that walk upon all fours, all winged insects that walk upon all fours, even though insects don't have, never mind. That walk upon all fours are detestable for you. Among the winged insects that walk on all fours, you can eat those that have jointed legs above their feet, so that they can jump. And so if they jump, that's a creepy crawly. That's the what a creepy crawly. So like a grasshopper, right, or a locust, or something that jumps. Cricket. Ooh, crickets are delicious, right? So something that jumps. That's what a creepy crawly is like. If it doesn't do that, but you see, the whole point here is that they make explicit their presuppositions, and because those but there are lots of land animals that don't do that. No. That's their presuppositions that they're making explicit, because those are the presuppositions, this is how they argue. You know, so, and it has to do with eating, which sort of comes to my other point. Throughout Leviticus obviously deals a lot with, it's actually, if you think about it, for me at least I appreciate it this way, because I live in the 21st century maybe. But when you think about it, this is a very scientific way of thinking about things. It organizes creation in a certain way. with the animals, it differentiates in a way exactly like Linnaeus did in the 1700s, and that is what types of animals are closer and what types of animals are further away from each other. Right? It's an organizational principle. Leviticus is also going to work not only in organizational principles, it's also going to work in symbols. And that is, there are certain symbol things that symbolize this type of process. We've already talked about one of them, corpses. A corpse itself, by its very nature, symbolizes death. And therefore, anything that comes in touch is going to be really important for Leviticus, for a point that I'll talk about in just a second. Anything that comes in contact with a corpse, even if you wash your hands afterwards, even if you apply antiseptic, even though they don't know what antiseptic is, but even if you do all these things, you just need to be careful, right? Again, it's not that you're wicked, it's not that you're evil, it's just pay attention. All right. But there's also other symbols. These central symbols, there's going to be symbols, you know, walls become a symbol in Leviticus. What happens to walls are important, not because of walls themselves, but walls become important because of their symbolic value, and that is what walls do. Is that they separate outside from inside. And therefore, when there is something wrong, Leviticus will go on and on and on about spots on walls, which sounds silly and crazy. Why are you going on and, well, I mean, there's like bigger issues at work if you're trying to set up a society, right? Why are you talking about spots on walls? Because of the symbolic value of it, right? And that is, if there is a wall, that there's a spot on it, what you do is that you go outside and you see if that spot goes all the way through the wall. And if that spot goes all the way through the wall, then you tear it out and you rebuild the wall. If it doesn't go all the way through, then you can leave it be. And the purpose of that is that boundaries are important. And if you're going to graduate from Perkins and go into ordained ministry, let me warn you right now, Leviticus says boundaries are important, right? Don't make me explain, right? Boundaries, right? Boundary issues and things like this, right? Clothes are a symbol in Leviticus. Clothes themselves become a symbol. And so with spots on clothes, things like this, becomes very important. However, the central symbol, this is what I think is so beautiful, the central symbol in Leviticus, for in fact the central symbol in Leviticus for the way in which the world as a whole exists is Time magazine. This was about 15 years ago when we were sending the things of going to Mars. I did that on purpose.
Oh, yes, you did.
When they were sending the things up to Mars for the initial thing, trying to find life, right? There was an article in Time magazine by Joel Achenbach. I still remember this. So many years later, by Joel Achenbach. And the gist of the article, it was just a 2-column thing in Time magazine, but it's like, if we found life, how would we recognize it? Right? Because again, we're not on Earth, or someplace else in a very different context. So how would we recognize life if we saw it in some other non-Earth context? Water? No, not necessarily. I think life could exist without water, blah, blah, blah. Salt, right? Some sort of sodium. No, it seems to blah, 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 blah. So he went through all these types of scenarios, and this is what he came down to, and I thought it was absolutely brilliant. It's the first thing I thought of is Leviticus. That's just the way my brain works. How can we recognize life if we saw it in some other context? What is it about a living thing? It doesn't matter where you see it, in what corner of the universe. A living thing will always have this. A membrane. Something that separates the thing from something that's not the thing. skin is going to be extremely important in Leviticus. Because skin, in a sense, is exactly what defines what is roy and what is not roy. The human body becomes the preeminent symbol of this whole schema. And in fact, the human body becomes the preeminent symbol of the whole of creation. And therefore, anything that is not roy, that goes into and becomes roy, you gotta watch that. Again, it's not bad, but you need to pay attention to when that stuff happens, like eating and drinking. And whenever there are things inside roy that come out of roy, in all sorts of ways, you need to pay attention to that. Because it very well may be that those things that are coming out, if you don't pay attention to it, you may fall over the precipice. Because those things, like a hemorrhage for 12 years, tend toward death. Yeah?
You talking about eating, and like that threw you to Leviticus, but you're saying that kind of like sent me back way to Genesis, when with the fruit of the tree, it's like it wasn't when they touched it, and it wasn't when they picked it, it's when they eat.
That's right, exactly. And I thought you were also going to say, in that first creation story, if you remember, God creates human beings, yada, 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 and then there's this long speech about what you can eat.
Yeah.
Who cares? Human beings are on the scene. Let's get on to the Sabbath and get on with it, right? No, it's like it's so beautiful, thank you. In that initial first creation story, there's this whole thing about what we can eat and what differentiates what we eat from what animals eat. Oh, that's awesome. Things that are outside the body that go in, you need to pay attention to that. It's so funny is that this is the scheme of Leviticus, and we do the same exact thing. Ours just looks like that. We have that, and we have that, and we have that, and we have that. And we pay attention to things that we eat, and we need to eat things in a certain way, and we need to eat in certain proportions, and blah, 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 blah. We do the same thing. It's not weird. In fact, I strongly suspect that every culture does the same thing. Things that are outside going in, you need to pay attention. Things that are outside, inside that come out,
Well,
you need to pay attention to that.
they're saying orange juice is bad for you now.
Yep, that's what they say. Cool. Cool. 2 more minutes. We're not gonna, I don't think, oh, yeah, let's look, take a look at this. 19. This is a great chapter. The Lord spoke to Moses, saying, "Speak to all the congregation of the people of Israel and say to them, you should be holy, because I, the Lord your God, am holy." See, now you know what that means.
Can holy mean perfect?
It doesn't mean perfect. It means dedicated to the worship of God.
No, I was just saying, could it mean? Okay.
Yeah. "And you should teach each one to revere your mother and your father, and you should keep my Sabbaths. I'm the Lord your God. Don't turn to idols or make cast images for yourselves. I'm the Lord your God. When you offer a sacrifice of well-being to the Lord, offer it in such a way that it's acceptable in your behalf." And I can tell you that applies, I don't care where you are. I don't care if it's at a golden altar, if it's in the Methodist church. It really is true. Again, the presuppositions are different. But the things, larger things it's trying to argue, are always true. It should be eaten the same day that you offer it. On the next day, anything left over the third day should be consumed in fire, because I can tell you, third day, it's going to cause something inside your body to come out of your body in a way that, yeah. So anyway.